What is up, guys? Not going to do a crazy intro or anything. We're just going to get right into it. This is going to be a VISCOUS guide, how to play VISCOUS in Deadlock. It's going to be like my other guides, and people seem to like those, where we're going to go over some of the simple stuff, the base stuff that comes with VISCOUS. So if you're brand new to Deadlock, you can kind of understand what he does and his style of play and all that. And then we'll get into some more of the advanced stuff, some tips and tricks I have for you guys, how to play him in any given game. And we'll actually go over like a good VISCOUS build right now and kind of why it's a good VISCOUS build, because the build might change. So I want you guys to kind of understand the philosophy behind a good VISCOUS build, why you go certain items on him and the interactions that they have. For the past few months, one of my VISCOUS builds was the top daily for the entire time. So yeah, hopefully I can explain why. So VISCOUS is a pretty unique character in Deadlock because I would say he's one of the few like mage, enchanter, range caster type characters in this game. You know, that archetype of character exists in other MOBAs and other hero shooters and that kind of thing, but it's actually a little bit rare in Deadlock. He's got a ton of range and he can be played very much in that support playstyle or in that ranged nuker playstyle where you just keep your distance in a team fight, you stay really far back and you just do a ton of ranged AoE damage to punish people for grouping up in team fights. I think that's part of the reason people love this character so much and I love him, is because he's actually a bit unique as far as the Deadlock heroes right now. So hopefully I can show you how to best utilize that. But VISCOUS is definitely one of the few that fulfills that role. VISCOUS left click, it shoots out a single bullet. You have a base 20 mag size right now. It's relatively high velocity. It used to do a lot more gun damage, but they nerfed it because the gun was running rampant for a while. So it doesn't hit too hard in each bullet, but the poke damage does really build up in lane if you can hit a lot of them, because it's a relatively high fire rate for a base gun. However, a relatively unique thing about VISCOUS is he does have an alt fire. It shoots out 5 bullets and there's a max distance on it where it will actually explode, and it does AoE damage at the end. So it will explode on impact or explode on max distance. So if I go back, it'll explode max distance and hit them. So it might seem like a negative that it has a max distance, but you can actually use it to your advantage, because if you just, know the spacing for how far it can go, you can explode in AoE every single time and get guaranteed hits. But of course, it also explodes on impact, and you can see it does 41 damage, so it does a little bit less damage if they're a little bit further away from the center of impact. And this exploding on impact includes the ground, so you can shoot it at people's feet to get a little bit more guaranteed procs. So this is very good poke, especially in lane. You should be spamming your right clicks, especially because a lot of people are going to be hiding behind the map geometry in lane. They're going to be sitting behind walls, sitting behind like veils, and just using the map geometry to their advantage. But one unique thing about VISCOUS that other characters may not be able to do or have is that he can poke around corners. He can actually, guaranteed hit some poke damage when people are trying to hide. Almost every other single character is going to have to get line of sight to actually hit their gun and be relevant, whereas VISCOUS does not have that downside. He can just hit his right clicks around corners, get a lot of extra poke in lane that other characters wouldn't be able to do. Now, the right click does use 5 bullets, and it has its own fire rate, or I guess cooldown between each use of it. So I'm spamming it right now. This is how fast it's going to go. However, one quick tip that I have for you guys. So let's say you are spamming with your left click and you get all the way down here. Even though it does use 5 bullets, it doesn't matter. If you just have 1 bullet in your mag and you right click, it's still going to hit for the full amount. It's still going to be considered, using 5 bullets, even though it was 1. So you don't want to only spam your right clicks. I would recommend mixing in a lot of left clicks with your right clicks. But if people are behind like walls and stuff, then definitely throw in some right clicks, and definitely make sure you use this little trick, because it'll just give you more DPS and more efficiency by turning 1 bullet into a 5 burst. Now let's get into VISCOUS abilities, starting with VISCOUS 1, which is his splatter. It's sort of like VISCOUS' nade, but of course it's in the name. It'll splatter, it'll do damage on impact, and also bounce around, and it'll leave this green AoE in its trail. This green AoE slows enemies and makes it so you and your teammates can actually slide further. So it gives you some slide speed and distance. Now, each subsequent hit to the same target will deal less damage, but you're still getting rewarded for hitting multiple ricochets on somebody. So the way you kind of want to generally use this ability is kind of throwing it towards people's feet, so it's more likely to bounce again in the AoE around them, so you can get multiple hits. It's also very good in corridors and enclosed spaces, so you want to be looked to using it in those, because obviously, the smaller the box, the more likely it'll get some bounces off in that box. Right now, this is the ability that you're going to be maxing first, and generally speaking, that's always kind of how it's been. But once you get 2 points to it, it's actually a pretty short cooldown. So the way I recommend using it in lane is for poke, especially if you can use it to hit 1 enemy plus another minion, or a couple minions plus the enemy. So if the enemies are grouping up around their minions, then a lot of times I'll just throw out that splatter, because I'm going to be able to hit him plus the minions and get a lot of bang for my buck. Any AoE ability that's good for poke, I like to use it on the enemy minions plus the enemy heroes. I like to call it just getting good bang for your buck. So like I did mention, it does slow enemies and increase you and your teammates' slide distance, but for the most part, that's not something you have to think about all that much. And the benefit of that will just kind of naturally come by using your 1 correctly, which is, for damage or punishing people for grouping up and that kind of thing. There's more tech that I have for splatter, but I'm just trying to keep it simple, so we're going to leave that for the tips and tricks section. Moving on to Cube. Now, this is why VISCOUS is very much viable as a support character. So Cube is an ability that you can use on yourself or on allies, your teammates. It gives you some regen, and it also makes you completely immune to damage. So when you're in this cube, not only is any outside AoE damage not going to do damage to you, but any dot damage that was on you before is not doing damage to you. However, until it's max rank, it does not cleanse that damage. So if you do have a dot on you and you get cubed, you're not taking that damage during the dot, but once you come out of it, you'll again take that damage until it's max. Once it's max, however, it will remove all non-ult debuffs. So like a pocket ult, it won't cleanse. It used to, but that's not how it works anymore at max rank. However, one thing to note is you're not CC immune in this cube, even though it might feel like it if you're brand new. You know, if a lash is up in the air on the enemy team and grabs this cube right now, he can just throw it. And that's true for all CC. You are just not going to be CC immune in the cube, so keep that in mind. However, it's still very good for countering CC because with most CC, you want to burst people off of it, right? So because of the damage immunity in the cube, you're going to be countering that. So if a Mo ults this Infernus, I can cube them, and they're not going to be taking that damage. You know, if a Lash does ult this Infernus, and I have good positioning, which you should on Viscous, be playing far back, and I cube the Infernus, you know, if he gets thrown into the enemy team, he's not going to be taking damage during all that, so he can delay that death or maybe save him in that scenario. This is true for Paradox Swap, Holiday ult, mostly like pick characters, Bebop pull, but really in general, if people are going on a single target on your team and you play far back enough and get a cube off, that could be you winning the fight. So generally speaking, that's how you want to use it, to kind of like prevent your teammates from being bursted down or yourself. But you can also use it for the sustain, especially in lane. Like a lot of times you'll be buying Healing Right on Viscous, which is just like a healing item. You can cube Healing Right your teammate or cube Healing Right yourself, playing really far back out of position, out of line of sight of the enemies. And you're gonna heal for like 600 between waves easily with cube plus a Healing Right. So it can be very good for sustain, but for the most part, you wanna be saving it for burst damage and for the fights themselves. One quick tip, since it's simple, a lot of people's first instinct when you're cubed is to melee you, because you can actually reposition the cube like this. If you melee somebody, you kind of send them. I didn't mean to do that, but you get the idea. So because of that, a lot of times if you cube yourself or your teammate, the enemy will try and melee you. You can actually cancel it and parry, and a lot of times you'll get an extra parry off, especially at lower levels of play. That's bound to happen. Less likely to happen at higher levels of play or Eternus, but it still does happen up here. Another quick tip, because like I said, you can melee the cube to reposition it. You can cube your teammates and then melee them, you know, back into tower to keep them safe, keep them in a good position. Of course, they can cancel the cube and you can as well, but if they're low and trying to avoid the damage, then, you know, it's very easy for you to just cube them and put them into a better spot. And last thing to note about the cube real quick, your two. In MOBAs and hero shooters, whenever you're playing the character that has the cleanse, you quickly become the target that enemies want to go on because they can't go on, you know, your teammates because you're just going to cleanse them. So make sure you're positioning really far back, almost sort of baiting your teammates because you can actually help them and save them and get a good start to a fight because she'll make it so the enemies waste abilities on the person that's, you know, out of position, quote unquote, and you can just cube them. So make sure you're staying back, baiting your teammates because you can actually help them and you're not being the first one in so that, you know, you don't become the target. Next up, we have Puddle Punch, which is a fist that you can create off of any geometry on the map. So a floor, the wall, and this might be a bit more advanced tech, but real quick, you can actually punch off the skybox as well. So this ability is going to reposition enemies and allies and yourself, in fact, and we'll go over that here in a sec, but it does actually melee damage. So it's going to scale off of your gun and melee items, meaning that it will also proc melee items. So an item like Spirit Snatch, which is usually just going to proc off of your, you know, your Qs or your heavy melees or your light melees, it'll actually proc off of your fist as well. And this ability can actually be parried because it's considered a melee. So as you can see, I tried to fist the Viscous here and he parried it. So we didn't do any damage and it keeps his parry cooldown. So hopefully you're starting to notice this theme with Viscous where he's very much taking advantage of all the geometry on the map, not just because of his ricochets now with his one, but also his fist now. We want to be using that off of walls, especially behind enemies. We can very easily reposition an enemy towards us, towards a bad position in the fight just by hitting them against a wall behind them. Like I said, this also works on your teammate. So if you're trying to help your teammate get back into a good spot, you can use the fist for that. It's especially good when combined with your cube. Say your teammate gets out of position, you can cube them and you can actually fist them and move the cube. So they're safe during that whole process. And it works on yourself. So we can just fist off the wall and we'll go flying a bit. And you can do this off the ground as well to get a little bit of extra verticality. So you're trying to get up to like a bridge buff or something, you can just go ahead and double jump with a fist and you'll go much more in the air. So because Puddle Punch can be parried at higher levels of play, you're using it less for the damage and the poke and more for the movement because there's a ton of good movement that you can do with it. At lower level of play, you'll probably more likely to get a lot more of your fists off for damage. So you're just gonna have to test in your own games. If you're starting out, you're probably gonna be able to get away with puddle punching people a bunch, but once you get to higher levels of play, you can use it for repositioning your own teammates and for getting good movement for yourself. There's a lot of tech that goes into Puddle Punch, but one simple big tip that I have for you guys is when you're using it for movement, say you're trying to get out of a bad position, you dove and people are going on you now and you just need to get away as fast as possible. The best way to use the Puddle Punch for movement is to be a little bit further away from the wall, almost like the max size of the fist. And also you want to double jump right before it hits you so you can get a ton of air. Notice if I just do a regular jump, you can see I get some distance, it's not too bad. But if I do a double jump, I can get a lot of distance, a lot of verticality, and get out of like pretty much any bad spot. And since we've gone over Viscous's gun and the first three abilities, I can show you the general combo that people use on Viscous. And it's going to be a fist into your splatter into a right click, all a really good instant burst damage. So it will look something like this. You know, right click, splatter, fist, all hit. and it's a ton of good burst damage. It's just a little bit of timing, but it's a pretty hard combo to miss, honestly, because they're all AoE. So you kind of just 3 off the wall, wherever they may be, 1 the ground, splatter the ground, and right-click the ground, and you should hit it like every time. And then lastly, we have Viscous Ultimate, which turns you into a big goo ball. It makes you a lot tankier and gives you some different movement. So you can actually roll around. If you hold left click, you'll go faster. You can double jump for free in this ball, so it doesn't use any stamina. You can just go ahead and hit a double jump. So you can combo that with regular movement, hit a double jump into a ball, and you can jump again. This is like your get out of jail free card, or, you know, when you finally actually want to get into the middle of the team fight, because like I said, most of the time you're gonna be playing range, playing farther back, baiting your teammates. But once you actually want to go in maybe and get, you know, and get involved in the business, then you can go ahead and goo ball in and you'll be a lot tankier and a lot harder to kill. Now, if you hit enemies with this, it does stun them, and you're also able to use all of your abilities while in ball. You used to need the ability max to be able to do this, but now you can use all of your abilities, cube yourself, you can cube your teammates, you know, all the stuff that you would normally do. And this includes using your fist. So you can use this for movement to get some crazy momentum around the map. You know, you can use it on the ground to go even further, get a huge jump. And there's definitely been some metas where ball is actually really OP, and you kind of use that to kill people. But for now, for the most part, it's just a get out of jail free card. You're using that so you can, you know, split push a lane and run away with the ball. Maybe even use it to quickly get across the map so you can rotate to a team fight after, you know, greeting a little bit of farm or something. But that theme of using the map geometry to your advantage still holds true for the ultimate as well. So if we're in closed corridors, we can bounce back and forth and get extra stuns on our enemies very easily with the ball. You can't perform a regular shift dash in ball, but you can perform a down dash. So as long as you have it bound to a key, you can down dash and you'll go further down very quickly. And this can be used for some advanced tech that we'll talk about here in a sec. But some relatively simple tech that basically every Viscous player knows how to do is you can actually perform a heavy melee right when you start your ultimate to redirect yourself. So if I'm going this way with the ball, I can heavy melee into the Infernus and I'll actually hit him and stun him. It can literally go complete opposite directions. It's very good for getting that first initial stun with the ultimate. There's been some debate whether this is tech or if it was a bug, but it's been in the game for like a year and a half now. I'm pretty sure it's just considered intended now by Valve, so it's definitely something you can use in your games. However, keep in mind this can be parried and you're not CC immune in the ball, so you will just get stunned. If this Infernus parries right there, it'll stun me. And now for a bunch of tips and tricks and some advanced stuff that I have for you guys. I talked about it a bit before, but you can actually fist off the skybox. So against flying characters like Vindicta, sometimes Talon, or Lash if he's all the way up there. Yeah, you can just go ahead and throw your fist off the skybox to make sure you get some hits on him, because otherwise, you know, there's nowhere else I could fist this Vindicta. There's no geometry near. There's a lot of ramps around the map that you can use your fist on that will give you some pretty good momentum in that direction. Especially if you time it with a dash towards the end of it, it'll give you some good distance and speed in that direction. This also applies to your ball, so if you can like go into your ball and then double jump off of a ramp like that, you get some crazy distance and you hold left click the whole time for the speed. This can be especially good from rotating from lane to lane, you know, getting from mid to, you know, green lane here, for example. Because the angle of your fist is going to depend on the surface that you're using it off of, I would recommend using normal cast until you get really used to the map and everywhere to use your fist, because it can be the difference in getting out or not. You know, if I'm trying to get down this lane because I'm getting chased, I want to be using it on a flat surface, right, to go that direction. However, you know, if I accidentally like use it over here because I'm like trying to use it off this wall, but I barely don't, and I go that way, you know, that can get me killed. Same can apply right here. Like I'm trying to get away, but this surface is angled. If I use it right here, I don't really get the same like direction that I necessarily want to. It's not too bad there, but you get the idea. Here's a good example right here. I want to use it off this surface, so I'm like looking at this flat surface this way, but look where it sends it, you know, it's gonna do it off the gargoyle. So definitely try and get used to the map geometry, use normal cast so that you know exactly which direction you're gonna be going. This tech's definitely used less often, but it's still there, and might as well tell you guys, you can actually get a higher jump off of your own cube. So if you're cubing a teammate, or if you yourself are cubed and your teammate is nearby, they can jump off of you and get a free it looks like an edge boost, basically. It's the same verticality, and you don't use stamina to do it. So definitely use less often, but still some good tech to have in the back pocket. The thing about Splatter as well, guys, is it does not have any drop-off damage. So you can shoot this across the map, and it will do the same damage it would have done if the person was right here. So just to show you real quick, Splatter for 222 right here. The Vin's right in front of me. Now Vin is all the way over there. If I splatter her, 254, proc my Mystic Burst, that's why I was a little bit more, but you know, same damage. So that combined with the fact that Splatter's a pretty low cooldown, don't be afraid to just shoot out some splatters across the map, especially when people are on camps and stuff. You can maybe steal a couple camps, Maybe hit them to get some good burst damage on them. Especially early game, I like to do it around these corners near when they're on their camps and stuff, because you can steal that pretty easily with the ricochets and hitting them. Especially when they're grouping up on their shop to buy. If you notice both of them are going to buy and your splatter's up, you can just toss it out over there and it'll hit them on their shop. We'll definitely get into the build a bit more, but a general tip I have is Rescue Beam is very good on VISCOUS. It's a very good item for him. Not only because you can actually Rescue Beam your teammates while they're cubed, so you can really reposition them and get them out of a ton of bad situations. But like I showed you before, we have so much movement on this character that Rescue Beam can be combined with all that movement to really get into some different spots and reposition your teammates. So let's say I'm going to go this way with my cube. I can jump that way and I can pull my Vindicta with me. And, you know, I just reposition her quite a bit. Same can be said with my fist, you know. I go this way. I can Rescue Beam her this way. And then even more so, I could cube her and fist her this way. And she'll be going across the map, you know. So a very good synergistic item that I recommend. And even in your pure damage builds, you know, it gives you some ability range and stuff. So it's still fine to sprinkle into those builds. Now, some more advanced tech that VISCOUS can do with his ultimate is called dribbling. And this could be like a whole video in itself. I recommend watching some dedicated dribbling videos on how to do it. The idea behind it is you're stun locking somebody in place with your ultimate by kind of staying in the same spot, by jumping up in the air and down dashing in the same spot and counteracting the direction you're going by inputting the opposite direction. So it looks sort of something like this. It just takes a good bit of practice for the muscle memory of like sort of counteracting the momentum of the way you're going and just kind of staying in the same spot. So yeah, just input the opposite direction of the way the arrow is facing with your ultimate. So I'm holding S right now to go the other way. And then make sure you're using that double jump in the air combined with the down dash to kind of stay in the same spot. Some more movement tech I have for you guys with the fist, that there's a lot less places on the map for this now. There used to be more, but you can still do it, is you can actually combine your fist with the vent and you'll get some crazy distance as long as you take the vent right as the punch hits. So if you go like this, you see how far on the map I can go. You just got to make sure that the fist is going the same general direction as the vent, you know, so you can kind of multiply that momentum. And you can actually do it right here as well. There's just a little ledge that you can use the fist off of, and you can go pretty far. Of course, there's a skybox, and this kind of blocks it, but you get the idea. When it comes to clearing the camps on the map as VISCOUS, especially these tier 2s and tier 3s, I recommend kind of like looking straight into the ground so that it bounces on the camp a couple times to get you a little bit more damage, a little bit better clear efficiency. Because, you know, otherwise we might just run up and splatter this and then it only hits it once, and that's, you know, losing us some time. And because, guys, Puddle Punch is considered a heavy melee at max rank, it does need to be max rank for this to occur, but you can actually break Graves' ult or Gravestone with Puddle Punch from a distance. So kind of a nice little counter into Graves. Because your cube can cleanse non-ult debuffs, that's usually going to be the ability you max second after splatter. And with that being said, there's a ton of like dots in the game that are very hard countered by cleanses. So Shiv Knives, Infernus, Afterburn, Mirage, Jin's Mark, you know, all these things that you can very hard counter with your cube. So if you're ever against those characters, make sure you're maxing your cube second, and also communicate to your team. Say, you know, do you have Afterburn on you? How many Shiv's Knives? That kind of thing. And then you can cube them. And it's going to be a low cooldown. You're going to be cleansing quite often. And that's going to get you more overall wins because you're just going to be very impactful. And then lastly, guys, let's look at a good VISCOUS build right now. Now, I recommend using Lomain's VISCOUS build. It sort of just abuses a lot of the meta items right now that are good themselves, but specifically that work on VISCOUS. Headshot Booster is just a good lane item. We can get some good poke damage with that. Mystic Burst, we're going to easily proc with our splatters, like from a distance, very hard ability to miss, so it's just good extra poke damage. And Mystic Shot will actually proc, same thing with Express Shot, will proc off of our right click. So that's part of the reason you'll see it in this build, is these like gun proc items can be very good in synergy with your right click, especially because your right click is just kind of hard to miss, right? So we can get some guaranteed procs from a distance in lane, get some easy poke, and Express Shot will actually double fire your right click. So usually when we right click, it takes a while for us to hit it again, but it's still good burst damage. But with Express Shot, we can easily fire it twice. Then he goes into Trophy Collector, Veil Walker, which are two synergistic items because both these items are wanting you to like kind of roam around the map, start getting trophy stacks, and Veil Walker is very good for roaming around the map because you can gank people out of invis, and it allows you to stay on the map because it gives you some good heals. And that's what VISCOUS wants to do, because VISCOUS, in order to do damage and be useful on this hero, you do not need a lot of gold. You don't need a lot of souls. He's a high impact with low souls type of character just to begin with. So these items allow you to roam around the map, and then when you combine that with Improved Spirit, Tank Buster, Spirit cooldown, with the items that we've already gotten, we are going to have a ton of gank potential and kill potential in the early and mid game. And then in late game, we just go a bunch of spirit damage. And the reason we can get away with this on VISCOUS, we've talked about it throughout this entire guide, but you want to be positioning pretty far away. You're already safe because of your cube and your ball, but you also want to be baiting your teammates. So when we're baiting our teammates and we're allowing them to group up and the enemies to group up in small corridors and stuff like that, we can just get a ton of spirit damage off in these fights. You know, whereas other characters will probably have to build some resist or build some counter items a little bit earlier, VISCOUS can get away with not doing that because of everything that we've already talked about. Now, however, this is for the more damage playstyle, but he can definitely be played more in that support playstyle. And the way we do that is we just go some more active items that counter the enemies. So Rescue Beam is going to help our team get them out of bad positions. Disarming Hex if they have a lot of gun characters, very good. We can go Knockdown if they have some flying characters. But again, these items specifically aren't making ourselves that much survivable. It's for the entire team because we can get away with that because of the type of character that we are. So generally speaking, a good VISCOUS build is always going to have some of these items that allow us to do some good range poke. Sprinkle with some support items that can help our team out to combo with our cube to make it very hard for our teammates to die. Incorporated with some items that can be procced off melees, like a Spirit Snatch. Sometimes you'll see melee lifesteal. There's been some metas where we've just gone full fist builds because of the fact that your Puddle Punch is a charge ability that procs melee items. So there's been some metas where you've done that because you can easily just 3 them and get easy guaranteed melee procs off of, as long as they don't parry it. So yeah, this is the build I recommend right now, but it might change in the near future. But generally you get the philosophy of what goes into a VISCOUS build now, hopefully, and kind of how to synergize with all of his abilities that we've talked about so far. You can use like Warp Stone and Phantom Strike in his ultimate to get guaranteed stuns as well, like Warp Stone onto this Graves. Same can be done with Phantom Strike. If we have a flying character, get Phantom Strike up to them and stun them. So anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. I'm sure there's a thing or two, or maybe even more that I missed, but overall, hopefully this was pretty in-depth and give you guys everything you need to know about VISCOUS so that you can start owning with him in Deadlock. Like I said, some general tips are to make sure you're getting good bang for your buck with your AoE abilities in lane for poke. Bait your teammates because you have cube for them, and then you can, you know, do a lot of your damage from range. Make sure you're using your movement around the map to be a lot more slippery, so you're hard to kill, hard to lock down, so you actually have some efficiency when it comes to clearing camps and ganking lanes. You know, you can be in a lot of places at once because you can just get everywhere very fast. And you don't need to be greeting farm on this character. Like I said, he's a low econ, high impact character. So gank lanes, help out your team. Farm when you can, like in between ganks or in between little fights, but you're not going to just be sitting there in the jungle soaking up all the farm. It's not what you want to be doing. And yeah, and make sure you're abusing these corridors when people are inside of them because you have so much AoE damage that utilizes the map geometry. Especially around the mid-boss, you're going to have a bunch of like AoE that can punish people very easily. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed and learned a thing or two. VISCOUS is one of my most played characters, so I figured to make a guide on him. So hopefully it helped. I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe and healthy as always. Peace out.